Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. This is not a black shirt video. It's been a long day. It's been a good day. It's actually been a good couple weeks. A very good part of the year. This year started out pretty rocky, but things have gotten much better. And today we just did a lot of great things, but it was a lot of work. I'm recording this Wednesday night, and I wasn't even going to record a video today. I'm so exhausted. But I checked X and saw that there was news. I also checked my emails and saw that there was more news. So in this video, we're going to talk about these two really powerful earthquakes that hit Venezuela. And we have news coming out of Utah. We now have the most destructive wildfire in Utah state history. And that's the type of thing that I keep track of on one of my spreadsheets. So first we'll start with Venezuela. Associated Press, back-to-back powerful earthquakes hit Venezuela, causing widespread damage. We're going to look at some of these images on X first. So when it comes to signs of the times, sometimes we talk about the concept of people expecting cinematic signs of the times, like something from out of the movies. And I've said that many times. I think prophecy can be fulfilled in a way that's not cinematic. Well, this is one of those exceptions. This is, a video. I'm not going to play the video. I don't typically do that. But this is a video of multiple buildings that have essentially been leveled because of the earthquake. This definitely looks like something out of a movie. It looks apocalyptic. Just look at that. This video, and by the way, you can follow me on X. I'm going to repost all these if I haven't already. This is a video of the international airport in Venezuela. I don't know if they have more than just one international airport, but at one of them, this is what it looked like. You can see the lights are not off. There's dust everywhere, as though the apocalypse is happening. And here's another angle where the lights are still on. And for the people in Venezuela right now, this is the apocalypse. I tend to think that this is a sign of the times. We're going to talk about the reason why I'm doing this. I don't cover all earthquakes. There's something about this one that makes me take notice. And this is going to probably end up on one of my spreadsheets for a reason. We'll get to that in just a minute. Here's the USGS earthquake map. Okay, let's zoom out. Here's Venezuela. Venezuela's had quite the year this year. Earlier this year is when the United States captured Maduro. I haven't heard much more about that story since it happened. But anyway, you have these two earthquakes right here. They're saying, at least as of right now, one was a 7.5. That was the larger one. And the other one was a 7.2. There was also, I've seen a few things about this, but there was also a pretty large earthquake off the coast of Japan, a 6.9. But I haven't really seen anything come out about that as far as like damage or anything like that. All right, continuing, more video, damaged and destroyed buildings. It's really bad. It's really bad. Here's another one, dust from I guess a building or buildings that have collapsed. Looks like here's the aftermath of one building. I mean, just look at that. They got hit really hard. And there's more. Here's a subway station, a metro. You can't see it too well when it's paused, but there's a bunch of like dust in the background there. There's also some sparks. I'm not sure if it's dust or if it's smoke. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there. Doesn't look like it explains it in the caption. This is interesting. So I guess this is a hotel, Hotel Edwards. And this is what it looks like now. It no longer stands. It's been completely destroyed down to the ground level. You see right here to the left, it says Edwards, but it's missing the D after the earthquake, plus the rest of the building. Lastly, here's another picture. Okay, so let's go to this Associated Press article, read some of the details, talk about earthquakes, and then move on to the most destructive wildfire in Utah state history. Okay, Caracas, Venezuela. Back-to-back powerful earthquakes struck off the coast of Venezuela on Wednesday evening, causing widespread damage, collapsing buildings, and sending panicked residents into the streets. The 7.2 and 7.5 magnitude earthquakes roiled the region, with buildings evacuated in cities and areas spread as far as Brazil's Amazon, about 1,700 kilometers or 1,050 miles away. Later on, among the strongest of earthquakes to strike Venezuela in more than a century. So this is one thing that's pretty notable, but it's not the main reason why I'm covering this story. We'll get to that in a minute. People evacuated swaying buildings in the capital, Caracas, many visibly shocked as they saw entire walls that had collapsed, making furniture visible from the street. Dust columns could also be seen in two neighborhoods of the capital, where restaurants and other businesses are typically busy. All right, I think that's all I have for this article. And then we're going to go to the New York Times. We get a little bit more specific information here. Okay, so this is one of those like live blogs where they do periodic updates. The magnitude 7.5 earthquake was the largest quake in Venezuela since 1900. Okay, since 1900, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. The agency catalog includes a magnitude 7.7 earthquake that was recorded near the coast of Venezuela on October 29th, 1900. This quake was likely not recorded by modern instrumentation, and the record is based off of reports of damage and effects in the area. So I guess that's to say, well, it's on the books as a 7.7 based on what we were able to determine at that time, but who knows? So if it wasn't that strong, this could be the strongest earthquake in Venezuela for who knows how long. It's similar to, really quick, I don't know why not more people watch my video, the last one that I published. A tornado has struck Adam-ondi-Ahman. Maybe it's just because I've talked about tornadoes so much, mostly starting last year when we had that tornado in Independence. But on Monday, I think it was, I published a video about tornadoes. The day before, but I had recorded that video like on Saturday. And then on Father's Day, I went to Adam-ondi-Ahman and I ran into one of the missionaries, and he said that a tornado struck Adam-ondi-Ahman. I went home, I confirmed it with the National Weather Service report that has the coordinates for the start point and the end point of the tornado. And sure enough, it struck Adam-ondi-Ahman. Here's a snap tree that I took a picture of there. So if you missed this video, I would highly encourage you to watch it. I have it on my, dang it. I shouldn't have refreshed it. I have it on my Google Earth map. The link is in the description box of each video. This yellow area is what I know the church owns. Although I think the church owns much more than that. It's just what I know that they own. And you have this tornado that actually went into Adam-ondi-Ahman. Okay, so let's go back to the New York Times article. There's one other thing here. Okay, now this is the thing that's like really making me pay attention to this. A seismologist with the U.S. Geological Survey, Paul Earle, called the earthquakes, quote unquote, devastating, and said the agency's models estimated, quote, potentially over 1,000 fatalities to potentially tens of thousands. If you don't follow natural disasters like I do, you might think, oh yeah, earthquakes and hurricanes, and these are like deadly events. But you may not be familiar with what's normal and what's not. And having 1,000 or more fatalities from an earthquake is significant. So I have this spreadsheet called Signs Earthquakes, where I just take the information that's on Wikipedia. I cannot do all the work to gather all this information myself. It's accurate enough for our purposes. It may not be perfect, but here's the data for earthquakes going back to 1985. And when we're talking about fatalities from earthquakes, let's zoom in and we'll just look at this graph right here. Well, better zoom out to 150. Okay, so this is what it's looked like since 1985. Okay. What's really interesting is this first really big peak right here, this spike. It was in 2004, the day after Christmas. This was the Indonesian earthquake and tsunami. Earlier that year, in the April General Conference, President Oaks, at that time in the Quorum of the 12, gave his one and only, to date, big Second Coming talk, where he talked about signs of the times. He listed different signs of the times to pay attention to, including natural disasters. Later in the talk, he expounded on that. But, and now he's president of the church. So, and there were other things that happened in 2004, or starting in 2004. 2004 was, for the United States, the biggest year for tornadoes in the United States, the largest number of tornadoes on record so far. Although this year seems to be a contender. And then wildfires, which again, we're getting to that Utah wildfire in just a little bit, but from 2004 onward, you started having all these record-breaking wildfires, either the largest or the most deadly or the most destructive. Starting in 2004. I have a few that are from before, but it's like 2004 really starts like all these record-breaking fires. Well, earthquakes. So that's 2004, over 200,000. And then we have 2008. There were a total between all earthquakes that year, 88,000. And then 2010, we had another one, a single earthquake that killed over 200,000 people. And that was the Haitian earthquake, Haiti. But then after that, it's been, pretty like relatively minimal. There was a big one in 2023 that killed, well, I have to go over here. Let's see, 2023, the single deadliest earthquake that year was one that hit Turkey and Syria. It killed about 59,000 people. That's the earthquake. That's the earthquake that caused this. There was an olive grove on a type of Mount of Olives in Turkey. It's not called the Mount of Olives, but it looks very similar to the Mount of Olives. And an earthquake caused a large chasm, or in other words, this olive grove on this Mount of Olives was cleaved in twain, just like what we expect to see when Christ comes to Jerusalem to the Mount of Olives. And I tend to think that this was a sign. It's like a foreshadowing of things to come. It might be meant to put us on alert that the second coming is going to happen soon. This is a pretty dramatic image. Just a clean cut from this chasm that was formed from that earthquake. I wonder if, let me go back to, let me try and reload my Google Earth map. Let's go over there really quick. I just want to point this out. We might as well talk about notable earthquakes since we're talking about this one in Venezuela. But here's the one that caused that chasm. And here's the chasm right here. You see this? You see all the olive trees, and then there's just this big valley that's there now. A small canyon, you could say. This is just almost directly north of Israel. I do expect to see this happen in Israel soon because of the second coming. But going back to this. And then what was this? In 2020, let's just go over here. So column G has, this singles out the single deadliest earthquake of each of these years. So in 2025, we had one that killed about almost 5,500 people. And so anyway, we're talking about these two Venezuelan earthquakes, and they're saying that it could be from 1,000 to tens of thousands. So the only one recently that's gotten to tens of thousands was the Turkey earthquake that we were just talking about. Before that, you have to go back to 2011. I'm not sure which one this would be in 2011. Maybe it was the Japanese earthquake and tsunami. I'm not sure. But anyway, it's significant. We haven't really seen one that's reached the tens of thousands for a while, with the exception of the Turkey earthquake. So we'll have to wait and see how this pans out. In the meantime, we should say prayers for the people in Venezuela and support to credible, relief efforts that are out there. So please say a prayer for them. But we'll have to probably wait a little while to get those numbers. Okay. Now, I got an email from Alma Perry. Subject line, most destructive in state's history. And in the email, Utah wildfire. And then there's a link. There were a few other people that sent me emails, but Alma was the first one to send it. So thank you all. And thank you, Alma Perry, for sending me this link. So we're going to go to the one that he sent. This is ABC4 Utah. Most destructive in state's history. Governor Cox speaks on cottonwood fire, which has burned over 61,000 acres. This is crazy because let's go to my spreadsheet for wildfires. This is the one where I'm keeping track of anytime that there's a wildfire that's the largest or deadliest or most destructive in that country or state or province or territory's history. And Utah, I didn't expect to see Utah on here anytime soon. If we go back toward the beginning of when these record-breaking wildfires start on my spreadsheet, Utah's among the first. So remember how I was saying 2004 is when President Oaks gave his Second Coming talk? Since that time, that's when you get all these record-breaking wildfires. You do have a couple from before then, like Wyoming and Australia. And I've done my best to search all 50 states and just all the places that typically experience wildfires and make the news, countries and states and everything else. And this is how it plays out from 2004 onwards, starting with Alaska and then Texas, but now that wildfire is only the second largest because Texas broke its own record recently. Utah had its largest wildfire back in 2007. You have the number 7 there, which is interesting, but back in 2007, the Milford Flat Fire, that got to 363,000 acres. So if we go back to this, the Cottonwood Fire, as of right now, it's at 61,000. But if we continue, the fire was first reported on Monday afternoon. It was human caused. Officials expect containment to stay at 0% for several days due to the terrain. So we're gonna have to keep an eye on this one, because I don't know how quickly it's spreading, but maybe this could become the largest wildfire in Utah state history. If we continue, as of right now, ABC4 is reporting there has been no loss of human life. However, the fire itself has still caused significant damage. According to Governor Cox, they are still evaluating potential losses, but, quote, there's a good chance this is already the most destructive fire in the state's history. It's certainly catastrophic. So, the title of this article said that it was the most destructive. This quote says there's a good chance. And so on my spreadsheet, I went ahead and added this fire, but under column H for most destructive, I put a Y but a question mark, just to remind me to follow back up on this to confirm if it will be the most destructive in state history. Later on, additionally, Cox said there is significant concern over the dry conditions and drought conditions, with responding agencies saying conditions are the worst they've seen in recent years. Quote, I've never seen them this concerned. These are some of the toughest people I've ever met. I've never seen them so scared, Cox added. We know winds are going to pick up, and so this is very tough. Crews are doing everything we can, but what we see now is devastating. And then there's a photo of somebody's house or cabin. Well, or maybe not. That looks like a kind of like a public bench. And then there's a ramp and stairs. No, that's probably some business or something like that. But there's some structure that's burning right there. And that scene looks pretty apocalyptic. So we got that. I've also been aware. Let's see. Well, I've added it to my timeline called Timeline Second Coming, where I'm taking note of events that could be considered signs of the times, as well as many other things, and I'm putting them on a timeline. So I put this here for now. If it turns out not to be the most destructive, then I'll take this off. We're going to go to the U.S. Wildfire Activity web map on artgis.com. There is another notable wildfire that's over by the University of Utah. So here's Salt Lake City, and the University of Utah is, I think it's just like this whole thing right here. Yeah, University of Utah Hospital, School of Medicine, and yeah, this is the University of Utah. I've seen some stuff about this. According to, well, once again, ABC4 Utah, they're reporting that this fire is 95% contained. It's not over. This one was also caused by humans. They're warning people not to enter that area, even though it's 95% contained. That doesn't mean that it's not dangerous, but here's a shirtless guy that's decided to go and take a hike in that area. But you have this. I think it's kind of interesting. I don't know if I consider it a sign necessarily, but anytime you have something that happens, in or around Salt Lake by way of disaster, I take notice. When was it? I think it was 2024. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 2024 that on Pioneer Day, there was a wildfire that was taking place up here. So here's the Bonneville fire. Back in, I think it was 2024, there's a wildfire burning right around here behind Ensign Peak. Ensign Peak is a significant peak. It's the one that Brigham Young saw in a vision or a dream as the Saints were leaving Nauvoo. And when he saw Ensign Peak, he knew that this was the place. I have a couple accounts of that on my spreadsheet for visions and visitations. It has a pretty commanding view of the Salt Lake Valley. The flag of the Kingdom of God flies at the foot of the trail that you take to go up to Ensign Peak. But it's basically a symbol. It's a symbol of church headquarters, an ensign to the nations, and preaching the gospel to the nations. And what happened on Pioneer Day of all days, it was announced that the Winter Olympics would return to Salt Lake City in 2034. And on that same day, there was this fire that was taking place behind Ensign Peak. I'm not sure exactly where. Maybe it was in Hell Canyon. I don't know. But it was over here somewhere. Fire behind Ensign Peak, Pioneer Day, Winter Olympics coming back to Salt Lake. When the Winter Olympics came in 2002, I have this quote on my spreadsheet, so I'm not going to read it right now, but President Hinckley said that that was a fulfillment of a prophecy of Brigham Young, that ambassadors and emperors and kings and whatever, they would all come to Salt Lake. He said that the 2002 Olympics fulfilled that. So if anything, in 2034, I think it's going to be an even greater fulfillment. And Elder Stevenson talked about how this was one of the big events of this decade never to be forgotten, from 2024 to 2034. All right, so anyway, so we got these two fires in Utah that I'm keeping an eye on. So the Bonneville fire, and then excuse me, the Cottonwood fire, the one that's been the most destructive. So sorry, is down here in southwestern Utah, right here. And let's just click on it. Yeah, 0% contained, a little over 61,000 acres. All right, so that's the update. Pray for Venezuela. Pray for whoever is being affected by the Cottonwood fire. I don't know if anyone's been really affected by the Bonneville fire by the University of Utah, but pray for them too. It's not over. And we'll keep an eye on these things. All right, that's going to be it for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.